People are increasingly moving away from the built-in rule systems that would have taken the responsibility off the individual.
All of the action items for combating dopamine culture require the individual to fight against it on their own.
Even 20 years ago, you could have a pretty solid path sorted out for you. And now you can do whatever you want. It stinks. It's very hard.
I think that there are a lot of things that are good for people that we've decided are bad. Any sort of rigidity is considered like a prison sentence. Hey, welcome to The Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber. You are on your own. And with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
I have a dog question for you. This is not pertinent to the episode at all, but I have a dog ownership question.
Oh, okay.
You know things about dogs. I don't. I don't know what it's like to have a dog, let alone, like walking a dog. This is the question. Okay. If somebody is walking a dog down a road, the dog does what it does. They pick up with the little green bag. They pick that up. Is it normal to then throw that bag on the other side of the road to pick up on your way back home? No. Is this what people do?
I've never heard of this technique. It's an interesting technique. I don't know why they're so unable to just carry it, because it's typically pretty light unless you have some sort of giant Scooby-Doo dog. But no, I've never heard of this technique being utilized.
Okay. My brother and I watched somebody walk a dog right on the lawn, my lawn, does what it does. The people, pick it up, walk a little bit further, and then throw it across the road right next to my mailbox. And I went out on the porch and I'm like, can you take that with you? And the guy went nuts on me. The guy freaked out. He's like, yeah, I threw it there to, get it on the way back. You don't have to be so aggressive about it. And I'm like, you just threw shit at my mailbox. Like, I'm going to ask questions.
So, yeah, I don't blame
Help
you.
me understand this.
No. But I actually have a very similar story in which I was the dog walker. So I have this man's perspective. I will say I don't, what he did was really weird, especially throwing it. That seems like you're throwing it to discard it. But why would you pick it up and then throw it? That wouldn't make sense. If you were going to leave it, then you would just leave it. But anyway,
he put it in the bag.
Yeah,
he put it in the bag, and then he just didn't want to carry the bag on his walk, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
I see the logic in it.
Yeah, I see the logic in it as well. So I lived in an apartment building in Portland, Oregon years ago. And I mentioned where it was because it's kind of relevant, I think, to the temperament of the community at large in Portland. And I was walking my dog, and the apartment building was dog friendly, obviously. Okay. I had a dog there, but so did many people. That was part of the selling point of this apartment complex. So they had bags stationed outside the doors. Readily available, always well stocked. The bags were always there. I was walking my dog. He did his business, and I was walking to go get a bag because I didn't get a bag on my way out of the complex.
Okay.
I was going to get a bag, which was right on the wall outside of the building. A woman leans out she stopped at a stoplight in her car and leans out the window and starts screaming at me because from her perspective, I'm just walking away from the poop.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that misunderstanding.
Yeah. So she got all uppity on me. And so anyway, so I went and got the bag, and then, and I explained to her, I said, the bags are right over there. I'm walking to go get a bag to pick up the poop. And she was still at the stoplight by the time the bag was like 10 feet away. It's not like it was a block away. It was like very close. So I go grab the bag, and then I start waving it in the air and like dancing to mock this woman about how I had this bag. And I was like, is this okay? Here's my bag. Because I had a similar kind of virulent reaction to mind your own business. But I will say, this is your property. So this was not her property. This is just some random lady in a car.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't want to dox myself, but I live on a road that's not heavily populated. It's not barren, but it's not like it's like row houses, like they built in London after the Blitz, right? So there's, I don't know, probably half a mile of straight road with just a couple driveways. My point here is there's ample opportunity for the dog to go into a place that's not directly on my front lawn, and also places to throw that bag that are not my mailbox.
Right.
So if this was the guy's plan, this could have been executed in a completely different way that was totally inoffensive.
Were you on the porch when the poop happened? Like, could he have seen
I was
you?
in the living room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my brother and I were in the living room just talking, and we watched this. We watched this happen.
Poopgate.
Yeah, but I don't know, where the guy lives. I don't know who he is. I don't know. So I guess I met a neighbor.
That's nice.
No, it isn't nice at all. No, I don't need to know this person at all. And now I know them for a reason that stinks.
Literally.
Now, yeah, well, yeah. I don't like it one bit. But did calling that out now, is this guy going to make it his mission to have the dog go on my lawn until the end of time? I don't know. This is the opening salvo.
Yeah. Well, keep us updated. Let us know if there are any other poop incidents on the way. The technique is interesting. Hadn't heard of it before, but you learn something new every day. What we wanted to talk about today had to do with people being on their own in a way that is very different than it has been in the past and is getting increasingly more so. I had read, I sent you an article weeks ago about this dopamine culture idea, which I don't remember whether or not I'd mentioned this on the podcast. I can't remember anything, but the idea was, it was sort of charting a trajectory of different eras of mostly entertainment and the audience's sort of interaction with entertainment, and was stating that we're now in a dopamine, the dopamine culture. I think it used news as an example where, at one point you got your news from before newspapers, you would just get your news from the people around you. Yeah. Then newspapers came into play. So you would read the newspaper, and then television came into play. So then you would just get your news through, the 5:00 news, your local news, or the nightly news, or whatever. Then you had the internet where you would get your news, and now you get your news from Twitter and TikTok in, 30-second sound bites. And that's or you just read a headline and that's it.
I was going to say, if you even do that, yeah. like reading a headline I max out at that, pretty frequently.
Yeah. So it's kind of stating that there are many examples of this. Sports was another one where you would go for a long time, you would have to physically attend a sporting event. Then you could watch a sporting event on TV. Then you could watch clips of a sporting event on like SportsCenter, ESPN sort of thing, and the internet.
Get your roundup.
But now the dopamine culture positioning of sports is sports gambling. So now you're not just watching a sport. Now you're gambling on it through your phone, which raises the dopamine level of your interaction with that thing. So the reason I thought bringing that into this concept of you being on your own is relevant is because at the end of this article, the author outlines essentially some ways to combat dopamine culture. And they're not satisfying at all. They're barely, I mean, they're actionable, but they're the types of actions that no one is going to endure. They're the types of actions like delete the apps on your phone. Like that's literally one of the suggestions. Just delete the apps that you're addicted to. And it's like, okay, well, I'm addicted to them. So why am I going to delete them? No one's going to do this. But the crux of it is that all of the action items for combating basically the detrimental effects of dopamine culture require the individual to be incredibly strong-willed, fight against it, and make decisions that they don't want to make on their own. Yeah. So it doesn't put it in these terms, but essentially it was saying you're on your own. Like this is the world that you're living in. It's harming you. And in order to do anything about it, it's 100% up to you alone to fight against it.
Pretty much. Yeah, the responsibility is tremendous, but it extends way beyond that, like doing things that are healthy for you, stuff that article was about, avoiding this easy, dopamine-driven way of life. We were talking before we started here about how you're on your own with really developing yourself to be able to make good things, to make things other people care about and are interested in. It extends. It's a completely different arena that's driven by the same concept, that there's really nobody who's going to help you figure this out. The responsibility is totally on you. But this is a huge, if not the hugest, topic. Like it's so general that you look at a thing like Kevin, you're saying, delete these, the article said, delete these things from your phone, avoid these behaviors, whatever. Well, people are increasingly moving away from the built-in rule systems that would have taken the responsibility off the individual. And I mean things like a religion, right? Where a religion may instruct you, don't spend all day gooning on Pornhub. Well,
it's the 11th commandment.
The 11th commandment. It's up to you to follow that advice, but you don't have to create the advice, right? You don't have to create the rules and then follow the rules. Well, now you do have to create the rules, the system, whatever, and then adhere to it. And that responsibility is shocking. It is just massive. And, I say those built-in systems, things like people following a religious set of rules, people following a family set of rules. It is almost unthinkable now in the West, whatever that means, that a child would be expected to essentially go into the family business. Whether it was dad was a plumber, you should go into plumbing, or there's some job at the bank that your mom has while you're out of school. Like, well, let's get you the entry level job at the bank, and you'll move up, right? It's not even expected that you would live in the same place as your family.
Not only is it not expected, I would say it's actively discouraged. It's actively discouraged. Yeah, you're shamed for that.
Yeah. I've been thinking about a lot of this in really the last 2 years, but mostly the last few months, where I've been kind of looking around at family patterns and where people live and why why they're not around. And virtually nobody, if somebody, for example, lives where they grew up, it's because they've chosen to here, not because there was any kind of expectation that they needed to. They may want to stay and do their life. They like it, whatever. But it's not because their parents guilted them into it, or it was just what they thought they had an obligation to do. Well, that's completely different. So either way, whether you stay or you go, you were making that decision. You were creating a system that you were going to live within. Well, there's not a lot of help with that. And it's not any different with how, from how not to be addicted to your phone or the internet or whatever. In both cases, you have to figure it out. With the creative stuff, we were talking a bit about this in the pre-show, the warm-up, there's not like a program that you go through to be a YouTuber. There's not a program that you can go through in my estimation. Some people will disagree with me on this, but I don't think there's a capable program for writing that you can go through and come out being really excellent. You can be equipped with some basics and some tools. You can get, Michael's a good example. Michael of Vsauce. Michael's undergraduate education was in English. He is not successful, shockingly successful, with the content that he's made for 15 years, more than that, because of that program. They did not teach him how to be engaging, funny, witty, quick. Certainly didn't teach him about the science stuff. That wasn't part of it. It gave him some tools, to be able to pursue those things on his own. And he's done a remarkable job of it. That absolutely exists, but it's not like you can go through some program and come out being Michael, right? We've talked about our own paths that make us, viable in the marketplace, and they're all over the place. It's a winding road, a lot more spontaneous than we probably wished that it had been. So it all comes back to, you've got to figure this out, and this is on you, and you may get a little bit of help along the way. You may get some support from people. But ultimately, there is a tremendous responsibility that did not exist not very long ago. Even 20 years ago, you could have a pretty solid path sorted out for you if you wanted it. And now this is meant to be the good thing, that it's like you can do whatever you want. You can pursue any place, people, topic, whatever. You can do anything. It's like, okay, reinvent the wheel, like reinvent all of life. It stinks. It's very hard. And some people love it. Some people crumble. And some people just really struggle along the way. This is neither here nor there, but I'm going to throw this out because I want to transition to you with as awkward a thing as I can.
Okay.
Just the other day, we saw a study about young male erectile dysfunction. And something like 20 years ago, it was like 5%. Now it's about 30%. What has changed in the mind of young men in 15 years that literally kills boners in 1 out of 3? Like, that's a striking data point. And it's suggestive that there's a lot of stress, difficulty, pressure. You wake up to 100 puzzles every single day. And it wasn't always like that.
No. And I also want to go back to the active discouragement of things, because I think that, the reason it's difficult, you can't just diagnose, it's because of It's because of social media, and that's it. Case closed. It's a univariate cause, and just delete the apps from your phone, and you will flourish. It's like no, it's like a million different things. It's a shattered window pane full of shards that are hard to pick up and put back together. But I think a big part of it is that active discouragement thing. Is that I think that there are a lot of things that are good for people that we've decided are bad. And not only bad, but yeah, like shameful and embarrassing, and you're a loser if you do this sort of thing. And that's definitely a big part of the problem, is like any sort of rigidity is considered like a prison sentence. Whereas if you know anything about the creative process at all, and you have ever listened to anybody talk about the creative process, like you will understand that limitations are the playground for creativity. You need bounding boxes in order to solve creative problems within. If it's just a wide open field of possibility, then you don't know where to begin. So how could you find where to end? It's literally impossible. You could just wander aimlessly in all directions. A million years ago, I actually sneakily tried to get an internship at Adult Swim.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't remember what I did exactly. But how do
you sneakily do this?
Oh,
don't you just like send an email with an application?
No, I stalked somebody and got someone's phone number. This is like 2005, 2004, 2005, something like that. So it was much harder back then. Today, it's very easy to, find someone and message them directly or whatever. Back then, it was harder. So I did some kind of creepy Sherlock Holmes sleuthing and found someone's phone number at like the William Street offices in Atlanta for Adult Swim, and called them and just kind of started talking about how, I'm calling about the internship sort of thing. Anyway, I managed to get an interview for the internship. Like I got into the next stage of the process, and they asked me a question, why I wanted to intern for Adult Swim. What is it about Adult Swim that I find compelling? Why do I want to work there? And what I told them, which I truly believe and has exactly to do with this topic, is that I thought, especially at that time in those earlier days of Adult Swim, their budgets were nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Like they literally were taking old C-Lab cartoons and just redubbing them and Space Ghost and stuff, like just reusing animation from like the Hanna-Barbera archives or whatever and making shows out of it. But I said to them, actually, what I find so interesting about Adult Swim is that because you have such a limited budget, it allows for wild creative freedom. You have a tiny little box that you can work within. And the question is, what can I make in this little tiny box? And the answer ends up being wild, weird crap. Puppets and dubbing old cartoons and whatever it is. It ends up being more creative and more interesting and more wacky. You paradoxically end up going outside of the box once you have a little box. And they loved that answer. I don't know why. I think that they eventually figured out that I was some like total rando creep, and that's why I didn't get the internship. But they loved that answer because I think that was probably what that was the ethos of what they were working within, is that those constraints allowed for a greater variability of creativity. And
it's like everybody we've kind of ever talked to, their origin story is like, well, I had a camera and some time. And that's all I had. I didn't know what I was doing. And so that was great because it meant that what I did was unique. Almost everybody's origin story seemed to have an element like that. It's like, well, I had nothing, so I kind of could do anything. And and they found, they refined that as time went on, some version of your answer, really.
Well, and I think that the opposite of that are these big budget, bloated, horrible movies coming out that no one likes, where they have, $350 million to spend on some piece of crap blockbuster. And guess what? No one likes it.
How many, you got to help me with the era on this. Do you remember that era where every big outfit put like just shocking amounts of money into a YouTube channel? Like MTV did. And like,
oh yeah. NBC did. NBC had a channel called Above Average that they were dumping money into. I don't know. This is probably 2012, 13, 14.
Okay.
Around then.
Okay. So 10 years plus.
Yeah. 10 years plus.
Yeah. But I remember that era where their problem, it was part of their problem was that they had a huge amount of resources and they didn't have the sort of constraints that lent themselves to any degree of creativity. So they were essentially producing the same slop they were doing elsewhere in the world and on TV and all of that in bite-sized kind of things. And it's like, well, why would I watch this on YouTube when I could just like see it anywhere else? It just wasn't unique at all. And nobody wanted to see that. They wanted to see, people being interesting.
They wanted to watch JonTron. They didn't want to watch Comedy Central's, bloated, stupid YouTube channel.
That's right. Why would I watch? Yeah, I want to laugh at something. Why do I watch Comedy Central's, fully staffed, fully polished, just corporate funny when I can see a guy in a pink bodysuit
eating hair,
eating hair, right? Well, look at that. What are the constraints on that? A camera, $25 on Amazon and figure it out. Yeah. So you actually can make up your own set of rules when the world that you're doing it in is tiny, absolutely tiny. If I think about it like in a really mundane example, I've been thinking about what to do with decent amounts of acreage. Okay. Not hundreds of acres, not like that, but more than, a front lawn. Well, if I had to choose like what flowers should be on either side of my porch steps, I could scroll through and pick out two, nice looking plants and, Bob's your uncle, as they say. Well, the bigger that gets, oh God, does it get hard. What do you do with an acre and how do you maintain it? How does that fit within your life? How much maintenance do you have to do throughout the year so that whatever you're putting on that acre can, be successful so that it can grow? How long are you willing to wait to have any kind of payoff from that? Is it a timber situation where you might be looking at, best case 15 years, to see a buck from it to even make your money back? Or do you want something that is going to pump out, a vegetable in a year or two that you can reliably, deal with? Well, then how are you going to like pick the vegetables? How are you going to sell them? Where are you going to sell them? That's a lot of time. Well, timber, a lot less time. You don't have to have that maintenance, right? So anyway, all of these options hit when you have the bigger the money, the bigger the area, the bigger everything, the harder it is to navigate. And when you finally do make a decision, your level of confidence on that is very low. You hope that you've made the best decision, but you can't be sure. Well, I wouldn't really freak out about which flowers should be on either side of my porch steps. I'd be like, oh, that's good. And nice is good enough. Cause the investment is minimal and whatever. So think about the stuff that we're talking about here. What is bigger than saying you have to invent every part of your life. You have to invent where it's going to be, who you are going to be in it, who's going to be in it, what long-term, like whatever, you can sort out there, which is very difficult to know. It wasn't hard to know when you knew that you could work a job for 30 years and then retire and then, just kick around town. Well, what do you want to do down the line? Where do you want to do it? This is why the kids don't get boners. Okay. That's what it comes down to. The level of stress is so difficult, and you are, again, on your own. There's nobody who can really help you in a meta sense with this. They can potentially help you along the way. Well, I want to work at Adult Swim. Okay. Who could talk to me about, what that entails? Who could give me information? Who could write me a recommendation? Okay. So there's help and kind of mentoring bits for those specific things, but not for the big stuff.
No. And there are a couple of things I thought of on this topic. One, just going back to like the big budget versus small budget thing, is that we're seeing this play out in the video game industry, where recently there are a bunch of insanely high budget video games that are flopping. Like really expensive quadruple A video game titles, one after another, are bombing miserably. And then meanwhile, all of these like indie games, their heads are exploding over how much they love these games. That Balatro game, that card game, the poker game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a nothing of a game in terms of making it, beside it just being brilliant. And it's, one of the most popular games. This RPG that came out this year, Expedition 33. Everybody is in love with this game. It was made by like 30 something people. It was a tiny amount of people. Going back to movies, I've complained a lot about not liking any recent movies. One movie that I thought was great was that Godzilla movie that came out a few years ago. Godzilla
Godzilla -1.
Godzilla -1. That's what
and that was a $15 million budget.
Yeah, 15, 16 million bucks. And it's a Godzilla movie. You have a gigantic radioactive lizard. So it's not like it should be cheap. It's not 12 Angry Men. It's still like a big blockbuster kind of movie, but it was made on like a shoestring horror movie budget. And it looked beautiful, and the story was great, and the pacing was incredible, and everything was excellent with that movie. And then you have these other, $350 million bloated pieces of crap. The other thing I thought of had to do with the choices thing in terms of dating. So, man, I mean, you talk about all of this data coming out about how young people are struggling with dating. Well, prior to our modern era, your pool of potential romantic candidates was whoever was around, whoever you went to school with, or maybe you found someone in college, right? Now it's everyone. Now the potential candidate pool is everybody in the world who has internet access. Country. How are you going to, and also going back to that like weird shame culture around, I guess the way things used to be, is that I have seen people make fun of those who like marry their high school sweetheart and call them their soulmate, because the implication is like, you just happened to meet your soulmate in English class in 11th grade in your school of, 700 kids.
Yep.
That you just had that. Wow. What a coinky dink. And it's like, okay, like fair enough. I understand your point, but at the same time, how about you just never find someone at all? Because your options are everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Kevin, did I, through the turmoils of the last couple of years, did I ever tell you how my parents met?
No.
Okay. Well, my mom and her sister went out to do something. I don't know. They went into town for something, and their car broke down, and two similarly aged gentlemen stopped to help, give them a ride, and gave them a ride back home. And my mom married one, and her sister married the other.
Wow, that is like a movie.
Yeah, and my parents were married until their deaths. It was as good as any other marriage. Like it worked. It worked. And I am I know I've said this for so many years at this point. I am a massive, defender of the old ways on most things. And I know it doesn't resonate with a lot of people. But I'm increasingly a staunch supporter of simplicity and tradition and the older stuff, because the happiness is there, and it gets totally blown out in the weirdest way. And the TradCon stuff is an example of that, where that's manufactured in cosplay, most cases. Yeah. It is cosplay. Yeah. And I mean, there are worse things to cosplay. If you're going to cosplay, you can at least cosplay, stability. Maybe it takes and turns real. That's cool. But a lot of the elements that they kind of artificially decide to do are very healthy elements. It is, we talked about food recently. It actually is good to make your own food. It's good to cook. This is a nice thing, in the world. It's a nice thing personally. It's nice culturally. It's nice biologically. The health part is there. You have control over something. That's good. So when there's some meme of, a woman in a sundress making dinner for her family, it could be worse. Right. But I also think back to how much flack Jordan Peterson got for the clean your room stuff, where he was just obliterated by the bulk of people saying, oh, you clean up your room and life gets perfect. Well, no, that's not actually what was going on there. It was like, bring some order and stability and whatever to the tiniest little box, the smallest version of the world, which is your bedroom. Coincidentally, the very first thing you see when you open your eyes in the morning. Well, you can sort that out. It can not be a puzzle, and then at least you've got one tiny little foothold in life that, well, maybe when you walk out of the bedroom, everything is bonkers. Well, okay, then it's on to the next thing after cleaning the room. But it was that small scale little box. Keep it simple. Just get some control over it, because anything bigger than that is overwhelming, precisely because you are pretty much on your own. Well, you can be on your own and control your bedroom.
Well, and the opposite of clean your room is, damn girl, you live like this. You know that meme, damn girl, you live like this. And it's just like an absolute
and I've been in
dumpster.
Those rooms. Yeah. Like I remember the shock of finding out that there's a segment of women that are just way, way worse than men at cleanliness and order and whatever. And it's truly like a tornado hit this apartment. And the first time you walk into one of those, it's like, what are you doing with your life? I would love to see a longitudinal study on how the 20-year-old girl you live like this girls, where are they now? How much stability and order is in their lives now?
I had a friend whose car was like the damn girl you live like this meme.
Cars too, yes.
Cars are another thing where, yeah, man, his car was just, it was a garbage receptacle. It was just empty McDonald's everywhere. cups everywhere, drinks everywhere, empty, just garbage, just full of, you couldn't even sit. So, if I were to ride with him somewhere, it was like, okay, now I have to like brush the garbage off of the seat in order to sit down. And then once I brush the garbage off the seat, my feet are now like elevated on a pile of floor garbage. Right.
Floor, yeah.
And I mean, that extended to a lot of things in his life. And, a lot of things didn't end up going so well.
I'm sure. Well, people talk about this with desks that, because a lot of people have really disorderly desks and are still productive people and not stressed about it and whatever. But that's such a little tiny, tiny thing. And you're familiar with all the little pieces because you're at the desk all the time. You have, even when it's chaotic, you have full knowledge of the chaos and you have total control of the chaos. So that one I feel like is very different. But think about that. You can have a handle on a messy desk. You probably can't have much of a handle on something bigger than that. And the world is bigger than a desk. It's like, okay, you can handle the tiniest little data point in life and command that. Well, all right. Now you have to navigate, jobs and friends and work and, health and the rest of life. Yeah.
I do know a notable, except, there are outliers to everything. I don't know if you listen to every podcast, you've heard me talk about outliers and, my sweeping generalization, tendency. The outlier on the messy desk thing is there are some hyper creatives, like capital C creatives. Well, in my experience, let me just back up a second, that there really are two types of high C creatives. One type are the obsessively orderly type. So I am that type. My desk is immaculately clean to the point where like
your stuff is always like, it looks like, the way, like an IKEA showroom, how they have the whole room staged, like everything is pretty much in its place. There's no garbage. There's no like big project that's out and displayed that like you're going to get to eventually. It's not like that.
No, everything is in its place so that, yes, if some, YouTubers of GQ, photo shoot were to walk into my office today, I wouldn't have to move anything. They would just start snapping photos of my desk and, it would look, pristine and ready for my photo shoot. The other type are like the mad professor, just complete chaos, books and projects and notes and just everything everywhere all the time. And if they do, for some miraculous reason, decide to spend a week cleaning it up, 2 weeks later, it's right back to explosion mode.
Yeah. I think when Kevin has been in my house, I think his blood pressure jumps like 30 points when his foot crosses the threshold. I sincerely believe it's stressful just to be around that, because it's like, I'll get a bunch of stuff at an auction or whatever. And that'll, usually that's on a weekend, and I'll get to putting it somewhere, dealing with it one way or another. Kind of when I can, when it makes sense to do that. And I'm really into efficiency because I have such a large amount of things going on. Okay. So much stuff and areas of interest in all of this. And so like I'll put things next to the stairs to the basement, I don't take them down until I'm going down to the basement for something. So like every little thing I try to pull, utility out of. And that means, well, I might not have a reason to go to the basement for a little while. Or I'll do this to go upstairs. I'll put things by the stairs, and then they'll come upstairs when I have a reason to go upstairs and I'm empty-handed. but it means I just don't do the thing, right? And occasionally that can go on for long enough that it would straight kill Kevin.
Yes.
My couch was not a couch for like a month. It had light fixtures on it. And that's really tough because there's nowhere to put light fixtures other than the ceiling.
Right.
And I'm not going to call an electrician to deal with them until I have a critical mass of work for him to do. So it's like, what do you do with these 3 very large light fixtures, which they're vintage, they're antique. So it's not like they're cleanly in a box that I can put somewhere. And I'm like, well, I'll put them on the couch because that's soft and they're, delicate, etc. But it meant no couch for like a month. I mean, that's not, I go beyond the order or the disorder that I still have a command of. Like talking about the messy desks that you can still know where everything is. Well, I go beyond that too often. So I can't even control the clean operation of my life within the bounds of a house. And I have full discretion over everything. There's, like I should have total control, but even that I don't. So when you're telling people, invent your personality, which this is not a judgment one way or another. This is just a factual thing. We've seen a tremendous amount of personality inventing in the last 10 years, with things like gender, pronouns, sexuality, etc. That's not something that people had to figure out so much 100 years ago or 30. That is a big task. That's a very, very big task. And that's something that kids at a very young age are conscious of now. I'm glad that some of these tasks weren't really on my list of things to do as I was growing up, things to figure out as I was growing up. It's just brutally difficult. It is. And you go to a very unhappy place when this is the other side of being on your own. When you're not, you can go to a super unhappy place. You can go into a job that you really don't want to do and you aren't comfortable, gutting it out. So where's the blend, right? It's awesome to have total control. Well, I can buy the light fixtures I want. My living room can be a mess of auction buys. It can be a perpetual home renovation project, which it really is. That's kind of how I approach, everything here. Where's the blend? Where's the blend on what's optimal with guidance and what's optimal with being on your own? Do I want, a religion telling me not to have this app on my phone? Or do I want to cultivate this perpetual discipline where I'm constantly inventing and adhering to my own system to do things that small? I don't know I don't know the healthy balance between the two, but what I do know is that there's a lot more you yourself have to invent everything now than there ever was. And it's a struggle with the college stuff that's come up with so many people who listen to this show. It's like, is it what do I do? Is this useful? We've talked to so many people, creatives, who either didn't go or just, gave up on it.
Well, I think
There's a lot of stress with this.
a big, maybe the biggest problem with this that I have that I think exists goes back to you being on your own as an ending point, but because the starting point is someone like us on this podcast or anyone that you listen to where you're looking for guidance on this stuff, the solutions suck. Like the solutions, the recommendations are things that almost no one wants to do. So earlier we were talking, before we started recording, you were talking about writing, and you brought up this Charles Bukowski quote where he was recommending that if anybody wanted to be a writer, what they should do is not write at all and spend 10 years working some job, right? What was it? Was it more specific than that, or that was the general gist of it?
No, it was just like, go do something for a long time.
Yeah, go do something for a long time. Yeah. And then
the impetus was learn about the world and its people and you.
Learn about the world.
Just get experience being a human.
Yeah, learn about other people. And that resonated with me because that has long been my recommendation especially for younger kids. If someone comes to me and they're 45 and they want to start a YouTube channel, then I'm going to have different advice. But when someone is 16 and they say, how do I become a YouTuber? My advice has always been, go get a job, go work in a restaurant, go wash dishes, go work at McDonald's and work in retail. Go out into the world, learn how to deal with people that you choose to spend your time with, right? Because you don't really get the experience of dealing with people you don't want to deal with in school. Because in school, you can cluster within a clique of like-minded people really easily and create your own little bubble and ecosystem and sort of drive away the people that you don't like. So if you're a nerd, you gather with other nerds and you don't hang out with jocks. If you're a jock, vice versa. And it's more complicated than that. But, that's sort of like the bullet point Cliff Notes version of it. But working a job, you cannot do that. So if you're working at a restaurant and you're a busboy, well, maybe the chef is someone that you hate. Maybe the servers are people you would never talk to in your life for any reason, but now you have to spend 9-hour shifts with them multiple times a week, and you have to get along. You have to get along at least well enough to get through those 8-hour shifts multiple times a week after week after week after week. So you have to compromise. There's no way out. It again goes back to being in a little box, right? So you're in this box of your job and you're dealing with people inside that box, inside the prison cell of work. And you have to talk to them because you're there and they have to talk to you. And you have to learn how to, sidestep conversations that you're uncomfortable with, or not blow up and start fights with people. Or if you do, how to temper that relationship over time because you have to see them at work tomorrow, whatever it is. No less dealing with the general public in like a retail setting, or if you're a server or something like that. And every single day, it's just a rotating cast of characters who have all different kinds of backgrounds and personalities and needs and complaints and desires and wants and demands. You cannot get that just going to school, hanging out with your friends, and then going home and sitting on the computer and hanging out with your friends. There's no friction there. And there can't be, because you could just avoid it. You could just block someone that you don't like on X, or, unsubscribe from someone who said something that you disagree with. And okay, now I hate that person and I don't want to hear from them ever again. These are not the same thing. What going to work gets you is that life experience where you get to know other people that you otherwise never would have known. You get to understand them. You get to see their personality quirks. I mean, look, one time, I will never, ever forget this. I was a server and one of the servers accused me of stealing.
Did you steal?
$10.
What did you steal?
I stole.
Why'd you steal $10, Kevin?
Oh my gosh. As if
what did you buy
steal.
with the $10 you stole?
So we had we had change purses, right? So every server had a change purse, and you would bring like a freshly stocked change purse to every shift that had, multiple denominations, so that you could, properly make change for people who paid with cash out of your own change purse, because you couldn't go into like the till, because then the till gets all screwed up at work. So each server had their own change purse. This moron, one of the dumbest people, like literally intellectually deficient human beings that I've ever had the displeasure of having to work with, and I had to work with her shift after shift after shift. This freaking moron went to the boss, went to the owner, and said that I stole $10 out of her change purse. And it was so insulting to me on so many different levels. First of all, because I'm not a thief. I would never, ever, ever steal from somebody, let alone a coworker who I have to see all the time. And then the fact that I would steal $10. It's like, what am I going to do with $10?
I want to bolster this because just the other day, Kevin paid me money that I had completely forgot that he owed me.
It's true.
And put it, and like put the cash in an envelope and handed it to me. And I'm like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, your face was hysterical. You were just completely befuddled. That's why I was handing you money.
Totally lost.
And I was like, dude, I borrowed money from you a couple of months ago, and it had been bothering me that I hadn't paid you back yet. So here's your money back.
Yeah. So Kevin is the anti-theft, is what I'm saying. The opposite of theft.
Yeah, the opposite of theft. But I was put in that situation where now I'm having to defend my integrity to the owner of this restaurant and my boss, and just say, look, I don't know where your missing $10 bill is, Janice, or whatever her name was. I don't even remember her name, but I unequivocally did not steal it. So like, you can be mad about this all day. You can tell everyone that we work with that I stole $10 from you, but I did not. And I'm not giving you $10 because that would be an admission of guilt. I did not do this. Leave me alone.
How did it resolve? Like, what do you do at that impasse?
I just profusely denied it to the boss. I was like, look, I didn't steal money from her. I don't know I literally don't know what she's talking about. I didn't take her $10. So I don't know what to tell you. And that's pretty much where it was left. I didn't, give some olive branch to her or some mea culpa and say, although I didn't do this, I will give you $10 out of my pocket to shut you up. No, I wasn't going to do that. Yeah. I was not going. This was a non-starter 100% for me. I was like, no. And if you hate me and, our working relationship is contentious from here on out, I don't care, because that's not my fault. I literally did nothing in this situation. And your angst and neuroticism about this is yours alone. So leave me alone.
And then you kissed.
Yep.
This was the start of
and then I married her because she was my soulmate.
Hijinks ensued.
But those are the types of scenarios that I'm talking about, that I remember that 20 years later. Like, that was an experience that I wasn't going to get staying at home and playing, Final Fantasy VII or whatever I was doing those days.
Well, the difficulty, and this is, again, we kind of grappled with this before we began recording, is what actionable takeaway do you have from this sort of thing? Well, I think that we will talk about this phenomenon broadly, like its components piece by piece, and this is one of them. Things like you just tell somebody like that writing advice. Oh, go do something for 10 years. Well, that's not useful. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's what do you do? Why do you do it? What's the purpose? How do you make a good decision with what you do? Because just doing stuff, I did lots of stuff and they weren't all good decisions. Like I wasted a lot of time. I didn't know it until, I was in a hindsight position. But yeah, not everything you just go and do is useful. Some things that appear to be, very useful on the surface aren't, and vice versa. So how much can you even control when you say, well, just do something? There's this whole generation, it's several generations at this point, but that sort of like Jack Kerouac on the road mentality that's like, just be freewheeling and go, be a hobo and do drugs and read books and this and that. And like, it's all going to work out.
By Bob Dylan's song.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a blend in that one too. You can't kick around doing whatever and definitely get value out of that you'll use, kind of forever. Yeah, go die in an abandoned bus. Yeah, that is such an interesting story. The End of the Wild guy. That one
what is it?
Didn't work out ultimately.
I don't know this story. I don't know that reference.
Can somebody help me with his name? I want to say it's like Chris McCandless or something like that. He decided to go way, way up north, like Alaska up north. And I may be getting some of this wrong. But he found an abandoned bus in the wilderness and lived in it for months and seems to have been Chris McCandless. I did get it right. Oh, that's awesome. Eventually like ate a bad mushroom or plant or something and died. He was like a 20-something freewheeling guy, who, put himself in a like abandoned place being freewheeling and died in a bus in the wilderness. So Into the Wild, the movie is pretty good. It's worth a watch. And I think there's a book about it. But he was somebody who had a lot going for him and decided like, I'm going to uproot everything and give up, civilization. And so he went as far away as he could back to nature. And, it ultimately didn't work out. He was on his own and he went to invent a system and, that's how you die in an Alaskan school bus. Boss Fred says all the way back to nature. That is true. You went as back as legitimately as you can. But that's how hard it is. I mean, because nobody was there and there's no good evidence about exactly 100% how he died. There's that poisoning thing. And then Dan the Latch says he thinks he ended up with wet clothes and died of hypothermia. Even getting sick. It's like, well, feeding yourself is not easy. The food and water isn't easy out in the wilderness when you're really sick. When you watch a show like, Alone,
Mm-hmm.
You ever watch that show?
Oh yeah. I've watched a lot of that show.
Yeah. That's essentially a game show of what we're talking about. That's the ultimate you are on your own. It's never good. It's never like the people who win each time don't ever cruise to it. The winner is the one who doesn't get like freaked out and quit or pulled out by the show themselves because they've failed to such a degree that it's, their life is at risk. So best case scenario is that, you come out having like intestinal diseases and having lost 30 pounds and have a psychotic break from reality and then have to figure out how to reintegrate with your family and friends and all of that. Like, yeah, that's the most extreme example of being on your own. But it's not all that much better when it's like normal life on your own. All the things that help, and I want to return to this as we wrap up. It is worth noting, like you did, Kevin, all the things that help this are being actively discouraged. You're a loser. You're a loser, Kevin, if you live in the same town you grew up in.
A loser.
You're an absolute loser.
Yeah. You did nothing with your life.
You did nothing with your life. You are a loser if you're somebody like Jen, who had a class with a guy in high school and then ended up marrying him happily and having kids and a happy family and seemingly successful in all endeavors 20 years later. Oh, you're a loser, Jen. Why didn't you put yourself on the global marketplace and find your absolute soulmate? Yeah. You're a loser if you obediently cook dinner for your family, which it isn't obedience, by the way. It's not that, but that's what it's seen as. You're a loser if you live by what is that pejorative flying spaghetti monster set of rules that whatever. You're a loser. You stink. You're stupid. You are regressive.
Yeah, because you listen to a sky wizard. Oh, a sky wizard told you that?
Sky Daddy.
Sky
Reddit
Daddy
does the Sky Daddy.
That's what it is. Sky Daddy, yeah. You're a loser and you're stupid.
Yeah, you're a loser and you're stupid. Yeah. I'm a loser because I don't like do the experiences culturally and food and stuff that the whole world has to offer. That I'm not going out for like sushi and Thai food as often as I should. Like I'm a loser for having a chicken sandwich like I did today. Well, I get there's some reality in all of this, but I don't have a lot of stress. I don't have a lot of stress. And for the two of us, we've managed to figure out things like work. We've had to invent careers.
Right.
We've had to decide which parts of ourselves we wanted to put into that work. What skills, we've done this on your own stuff successfully. But we didn't jump into it. We did it gradually. We asked for help when we could. We were realistic about pretty much everything. We didn't really bite off more than we could chew. It's not like when, you did do a thing that I think is generally horrible to do, which is...
I did?
You did.
Okay. What was that?
Something that I would actively advise any youngish person never to do, which is to pick up, move to a city, and then figure it out. Well, you did this in your 20s.
Yeah, I did do that.
And I would advise not to do it because you're in a position where you have to invent everything on the spot. You have to build all of life all at once. You and your friend Chris, who went with you, were two people totally capable of that. Not very many people are. So it would be a unique person that I'd say, yeah, this is going to be okay for you. But how many times on this podcast have you talked about that process of invention once you got there, having to grind out the constant work of one kind or another? It was horrible. And you weren't even, from what I can tell, you didn't like reinvent your personality when you were out there. That whole thing was...
Yeah, that was solid.
Not part of the project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if you had, and a lot of people do this. I'm going to move to New York and reinvent my life. Like, okay. Like that's a big one, that is as overwhelming and geared toward collapse as I can imagine something being. There's on your own, and then there's on your own. It's even overwhelming to talk about because there's so much to it.
Yeah. And I also do think a couple of things. One is that just because we were able to do it doesn't mean that a lot of people can. You know, there is that sort of outlier kingmaker or whatever thing that it's called involved. And I actually saw this criticism from someone discussing, well, podcasters and anyone talking about life advice in general, which I thought was an interesting criticism, which was like, you're listening to advice from people who already made something, and barely anybody does that. Like, oh, you're listening to someone who's been very successful at what they do, try to tell you how to do that. Like on the surface level, of course you are, because who else are you going to listen to? So like, there's an inherent need and want to listen to people like that. But this person was saying at the same time, like at the same token, like, really, you're going to read Stephen King's book on how to be a writer, and now you're going to be a great writer? Like, that's absurd. Like, that is completely preposterous in and of itself as a concept, to be like, yes, I am going to read about how to be a writer from the most successful author of the last 40 years or whatever. And I'm going to turn that into my writing career. Like, it's like, I'm not going to watch a podcast from LeBron James on how to be a basketball player. Like, it's the same idea. But the thing I wanted to end on, and I do think that this will be an ongoing discussion, is just once again reinforcing and recognizing the fact that almost all of the advice of what people should do to get to a better place are things that they don't want to. There are things that suck because the things that are cool are the things that they're doing anyway. The things that are easy, the things that are accessible, the things that are tailor-made for them and are interesting to them and are like endlessly abundant in terms of their entertainment value. Those are the things that are distracting from just growth as a human being. And the things that nurture that are the opposite. They are the lousy things that have no discernible payoff, like you said, and take a long time and are not fun. It's like, so what are you left with? What are you left with at that point to tell people, hey, do stuff that's not fun instead of the fun stuff, and you'll be better off for it maybe 10 years later. It's an
the recognition. The recognition, though, and I do think that this is the takeaway, is just recognizing that you are on your own. That is step one. It's sort of like that, like, oh, you know, the first thing you've got to do is recognize you've got a problem. Well, there's truth to that, you know, admitting kind of where you are and where you're not. And I think anything we talk about in the future on this big topic follows that recognition of in what ways you are alone and in what ways you are not. And that's really something to think about. Thinking about, you know, to what degree do things like, you know, family and cultural elements and friends and this and that, add to things for you and make them more stable. Doing a sort of like the blood work on your life is absolutely the thing to begin with. And it may be grim and depressing. You know, that 1 out of 3 under 25s that are malfunctioning probably don't have answers to that question that are awesome. They probably don't look at it and just be like, oh, life is fantastic, except for the impotence. Like, no, the impotence runs downstream from what the study we read is psychological. It was not chemical. The link was not a chemical one. But do that blood work. I don't think that's something either of us did, Kevin. I didn't.
No.
I don't get the sense you did.
No.
I also don't think we had to.
No.
It was just there and obvious, and we knew it. We didn't have to take stock and do the analysis at the beginning. I think now everybody has to do analysis.
Yeah, you have to do analysis. And I also do want to say that it does sound really depressing to hammer home this you're on your own thing. But I also want to suggest that it's empowering. Like if you're on your own and you have the ability to control this sort of thing, then it is up to you. It's up to you. And try not to think of it in the terms of Shinji Ikari with his head in his hands, sitting in that chair, being yelled at by his father or whatever. And think of it more as like, okay, I know where I am. And now that I know where I am, what am I going to do about it? That's a better way of thinking about it.
I'm really interested in what people come up with when they do the blood work. I know it won't be millions, but I'm hoping that somebody tells us, somebody thinks about this stuff, takes stock of what their life is really about, and tells us.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us know. Thank you to all of our patrons for hanging out with us while we record here on Discord. Join the Discord if you're interested in being part of our community and be a little bit less alone online. And if you want to support the podcast, you can do that on Patreon. So please do if you can. All right, we're out of here. We will see you next week, and we will see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezergood, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Vidioger. And a tremendous shout-out to our elite baby gang commanders. Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Jelxies, and, of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.